The morning sun cast long shadows across the elegant compound in Victoria Island, Lagos, as 38-year-old Emeka Okoro stood outside his magnificent duplex. As one of Nigeria's most successful oil and gas executives, his home reflected his status: marble floors, imported furniture, and luxury cars that gleamed in the tropical sunlight. He looked toward the kitchen where 23-year-old Blessing was already hard at work, preparing the morning meal with the same dedication she brought to every task. The young Igbo woman from Enugu had been working as their housemaid for 8 months, and in that time, she had transformed their household with her diligence, respect, and quiet dignity. "Blessing," Emeka called out, his voice warm and appreciative. "Please come here for a moment." Blessing emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. Her simple uniform was spotless, her hair neatly tied back, and her dark eyes showed the gentle respect she always displayed toward her employers. "Yes, sir," she said softly, bowing slightly, as was her custom. Emeka smiled, his businessman's intuition recognizing genuine character when he saw it. "Get ready, Blessing. I want to take you to the Palm Shopping Mall today for some shopping." Blessing's eyes widened in complete disbelief. "Shopping for me, sir?" "Yes," Emeka nodded, his expression kind. "You've been working incredibly hard. This house has never been more organized, the meals are always perfect, and I know today is your birthday. Every young woman deserves something special on her birthday." Blessing's face lit up with gratitude and amazement. Growing up in a poor family in Enugu, she had never experienced such unexpected kindness from an employer. "Thank you so much, sir. God will bless you abundantly," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "Let me just get my small bag." She hurried inside to collect her things, her heart racing with excitement at this unprecedented gesture of generosity. But upstairs on the marble balcony, 35-year-old Adora had been watching the entire exchange with growing fury. Emeka's wife, a successful fashion designer who owned boutiques across Lagos, prided herself on maintaining the social hierarchy in their household. The sight of her husband offering their maid a shopping trip filled her with jealous rage. Adora stormed down the elegant staircase, her expensive Ankara dress flowing behind her like a war banner, her gold jewelry catching the light as she moved with predatory purpose. "Blessing!" Adeora's voice cut through the morning air like a blade. "Where exactly do you think you're going?" Blessing froze at the passenger door of Emeka's black Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon, her small handbag clutched tightly in her trembling hands. "Madam, Oga said he wants to," she began nervously. Before Blessing could finish her sentence, Adora grabbed her arm roughly and yanked her away from the luxury vehicle with vicious force. "Get away from there, you shameless girl," Adora screamed, her voice echoing across the compound. "My husband is your employer, not your boyfriend. Have you lost your senses?" Emeka frowned deeply, his voice remaining calm but carrying unmistakable authority. "Adora, stop this immediately. You're humiliating an innocent person." But Adora was beyond reasoning. She shoved Blessing aside with such force that the young woman stumbled backward, nearly falling onto the concrete. "You think I don't see your pathetic games?" Adora snarled at Blessing, her eyes blazing with jealous fury. "Waiting for me to make one small mistake so you can worm your way into my position in this house? I see through your fake innocence." Blessing shook her head desperately, her voice breaking with fear and confusion. "No, madam, I would never dream of such a thing. I respect this family too much." "Shut your lying mouth," Adora cut her off brutally. Blessing clutched her handbag tighter and hurried toward the house, tears already building in her eyes as she tried to escape this unexpected humiliation. Emeka sighed deeply, his jaw tightening as he turned to face his wife. The morning that had started with simple kindness had suddenly transformed into an ugly display of jealousy and cruelty. "Adora," he said quietly, "did you really need to create such a scene? Do you even know what today represents?" "I don't care what today represents," Adora replied bitterly, her arms crossed defiantly across her chest. "She's a housemaid, Emeka, a domestic servant. And you want to drive her around Lagos like she's some kind of society woman?" "It's her birthday," Emeka responded firmly. "She works harder than anyone in this household. She maintains our home, cooks our meals, and never complains. Is showing basic human kindness now a crime?" Adora scoffed contemptuously. Kindness. Which employer takes his housemaid shopping like she's family? This isn't kindness. Amika? This is foolishness. Amika shook his head in disappointment and walked away from his wife. You went too far this time, Adora. Much too far. Moments later, he found himself knocking gently on Blessing's small room door. She opened it slowly, her eyes red from crying, her earlier joy completely shattered. I'm deeply sorry about what just happened, Emeka said with genuine remorse. You didn't deserve to be treated like that. Not today, not ever. Blessing kept her gaze lowered respectfully. It's fine, sir. I understand my place. Emeka pulled out his wallet and handed her a substantial amount of cash. 500,000 naira. Buy yourself some beautiful clothes, some good food, and anything else that makes you happy. Happy birthday, Blessing. Blessing gasped, her hands trembling as she stared at more money than she had ever seen in her young life. Sir, this is too much money. I cannot accept. Take it, Emeka said firmly but kindly. And don't let what happened outside steal your joy today. You deserve happiness. He gave her an encouraging smile and left for his office, hoping his gesture might restore some dignity to what should have been a special day. Blessing sat on her small bed, staring at the crisp naira notes in her hands, whispering through her tears, 500,000 naira. God, you're too faithful. But she had no idea that her worst ordeal was yet to come. The kindness of one person and the cruelty of another. But this is just the beginning. Can you believe Adaora's jealous reaction to her husband's simple birthday gesture? Have you ever witnessed someone being humiliated for receiving kindness? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Smash that like button. If you're already invested in Blessing's story, and don't forget to subscribe, because next chapter reveals what happens when jealousy turns into something much darker. Hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss the shocking confrontation coming next. Blessing remained in her small room, still overwhelmed by Amika's unexpected generosity. She carefully counted the 500,000 naira again, her hands shaking with disbelief and gratitude. Growing up as the daughter of a struggling palm wine tapper in a rural Enugu village, she had never imagined holding such wealth. Thank you, Jesus, she whispered softly, folding the money carefully and tucking it into her small purse. This can help my mother pay for her medication, and maybe even help my younger brother continue his secondary school education. But just as she was planning how to use this blessing wisely, Adora passed by her room. The door was slightly ajar, and curiosity mixed with suspicion drove her to peek inside. What she saw made her blood boil with rage. So this is exactly what I suspected. Adora burst through the door without invitation, her voice filled with venom. Blessing jumped to her feet in panic, quickly trying to hide the money. Madam, it's not what you think. Shut your deceitful mouth. Adora's hand flew through the air, slapping the bundle of cash from Blessing's trembling hands. The crisp naira notes scattered across the concrete floor like falling leaves. So you've been milking my husband for money, haven't you? Adora snarled, her eyes blazing with jealous fury. Counting 500,000 naira like you're some Lagos big girl instead of a common housemaid. Blessing immediately dropped to her knees, frantically gathering the scattered money while tears streamed down her face. Please, madam, it's my birthday gift from Oga. He gave it to me because he said I work hard. Birthday gift? Adora's laughter was cold and cruel. My foot! What kind of employer gives such money to a mere servant unless she's providing extra services? The implication of her words hit Blessing like a physical blow. Her hands trembled as she tried to collect the cash, but Adora was faster. She bent down quickly and snatched the money away with ruthless efficiency. You will not use my husband's money to show off while I'm alive and breathing, Adora declared, clutching the bills tightly. Whatever game you think you're playing in this house ends today. She stormed out of the room, leaving Blessing kneeling on the floor, trembling with shock and crying silently. The joy she had felt moments earlier was completely destroyed, replaced by humiliation and confusion. By evening, when Emeka returned home from his oil company offices, dinner was served in their elegant dining room. The table was set with fine china and crystal glasses, and Blessing stood quietly at the side, ready to serve as usual. Blessing, Emeka said casually as he began eating his jollof rice and grilled fish. Did you manage to get yourself some nice new clothes today? Blessing froze completely. Her hand shook as she set down the serving spoon, and her voice came out as barely a whisper. No, sir. Emeka looked up at her with surprise and concern. Why not? I gave you enough money to buy whatever you needed. Blessing swallowed hard, her throat feeling like sandpaper. She glanced nervously at Adora, who sat across the table sipping her palm wine with calculated indifference. I don't have the money anymore, sir, Blessing admitted quietly. The fork dropped from Emeka's hand, clattering loudly against his plate. He stared at Blessing in confusion, then slowly turned his gaze toward his wife. Adora, he said finally, his voice low but heavy with growing anger. Did you take the money I gave her? Adora didn't even flinch. She leaned back in her chair casually and swirled the palm wine in her glass as if she controlled everything in the house. Yes, I took it. And what exactly are you going to do about it? She replied with cold defiance. Emeka's eyes narrowed dangerously. It was a birthday gift. Why would you humiliate her like that? What has she done to deserve such cruelty? She's a housemaid, Emeka, Adora said sharply, her voice dripping with disdain. She cleans toilets. She washes our clothes. That's her function in this house. Since when did you start throwing 500,000 naira at domestic servants like they're your business partners? Blessing bowed her head lower, holding onto the serving tray with both hands to stop them from shaking, wishing she could disappear completely from this confrontation. Enough. Emeka's voice rose with authority. Don't twist this into something dirty. I was showing basic human decency to someone who works hard for our family. But you've turned it into something ugly and cruel. He leaned forward, his businessman's composure cracking with emotion. Do you realize how heartless you sounded today? Dragging her away from the car like she's some kind of criminal, taking money that didn't belong to you? Where is your humanity, Adora? Adora's lips curved into a mocking smile. Oh, so now you're the great savior of housemaids? Emeka the generous champion of domestic workers? Maybe I should step aside completely and let you marry her, since you're so concerned about her happiness. Emeka slammed his hand on the mahogany table, making all the dishes jump. Don't you ever speak like that again. This is about basic respect and human dignity, nothing more. Blessing quickly whispered, Sir, madam, please let me clear the kitchen, and tried to escape the escalating conflict. But at that moment, the sound of a car engine came from the compound gate. The security guard opened it, and a silver Honda Accord entered. From it stepped a teenage girl wearing fashionable jeans and colorful braids, pulling a small traveling bag behind her. Emeka stood up immediately, his angry expression transforming into pure joy. Kioma, he called out, rushing toward the door. It was his daughter Kioma, 16 years old from his first marriage. She had been living primarily with her mother in Abuja and hadn't visited Lagos in several months. Daddy, she said with a bright smile, embracing him warmly. Surprise! Mama said I could spend the next 3 weeks with you. Emeka's face glowed with happiness at seeing his beloved daughter. But when he glanced at Adora, he noticed her smile was forced and artificial, like she was acting in a play she didn't want to perform in. Welcome, Kioma, Adora said with obvious coldness. We had no idea you were planning to visit us. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife, and young Kioma immediately sensed that something was very wrong in her father's house. The money is gone and family drama is exploding. Can you believe Adora's cruel jealousy and theft? And now, Emeka's daughter arrives right in the middle of this chaos. What do you think will happen when a teenager witnesses this family conflict? Drop your predictions in the comments. Hit that like button if you're feeling Blessing's pain, and subscribe, because next chapter reveals how a young girl's presence changes everything in this household. Ring that notification bell. The family drama is about to reach a whole new level. Later that evening, 16-year-old Kioma settled into her room, unpacking her clothes with the help of Blessing, whom Emeka had asked to assist his daughter. The room was spacious and beautifully decorated, reflecting the wealth of the household. You're the housemaid, right? Kioma asked gently, studying Blessing's face with the perceptive eyes of a teenager who noticed everything. Yes, I am, Blessing replied with a respectful bow, folding Kioma's clothes carefully. Kioma frowned, her sharp intelligence picking up on subtle details that adults often missed. Why are your eyes so red and swollen? Have you been crying recently? Blessing hesitated, forcing a weak smile while avoiding eye contact. No, I'm perfectly fine. Don't worry about me. But Kioma wasn't easily fooled. She had inherited her father's business instincts and could sense when people were hiding pain. My daddy is very kind to everyone who works in our house, she said carefully, watching Blessing's reaction. If he sees you looking sad, he'll definitely ask questions and want to help. Please tell me the truth. What happened to make you cry? Blessing shook her head quickly, not wanting to involve the teenager in adult conflicts. Nothing serious happened. Please don't concern yourself with my problems. Downstairs, Emeka was in his home office reviewing business documents when Adora stormed in, her anger from dinner still burning hot. So this is the kind of household you want to run, she said furiously, her voice sharp with accusation. You defend the housemaid against your own wife. You fight with me in front of her. And now your daughter is here to witness you taking the side of servants over family. Is this really how you want your home to function? Emeka looked up from his papers, his face calm but his jaw tight with controlled frustration. Adora, I'm warning you clearly. Don't push me too far. That girl has done absolutely nothing wrong. You keep treating her like she's some kind of threat or criminal. This cruelty needs to stop immediately. Adora crossed her arms defensively, her eyes blazing with jealousy. Emeka, why would you decide to take her shopping without even informing your own wife? Since when do you start hiding your activities from the woman you married? Emeka straightened in his leather chair, his voice calm but edged with the authority he used in corporate boardrooms. Adora, I don't have to report every kind gesture to you. I'm the head of this family. My decisions about how I treat people in my own house are valid, and I don't need to explain basic human decency to anyone. Her eyes narrowed dangerously. Valid? So humiliating me in my own home is valid? Giving attention and money to the housemaid while your wife sits here feeling disrespected? Does that sound like proper behavior from a husband? Emeka's jaw tightened further. He leaned forward, his business executive persona fully engaged. Adora, so that's exactly why you stole the money I gave her on her birthday. Yes, I took it, and I'll certainly do it again if you keep giving away our family money without my permission, Adora declared defiantly. Go ahead then, Emeka said, his voice unnaturally calm in a way that suggested a storm brewing beneath the surface. Upstairs, Kioma had stepped into the hallway and could hear the echo of raised voices from her father's office. She froze at the top of the elegant staircase, listening to the unmistakable sounds of her father's controlled anger and her stepmother's sharp accusations. In that moment, Kioma's teenage intuition told her something important. This beautiful house wasn't as harmonious as it appeared from the outside. There were serious problems brewing beneath the surface of wealth and success. The next morning, Kioma was awake early, exploring the house she hadn't visited in months. As she passed by the kitchen, she found Blessing bent over the sink, washing dishes with the same quiet dedication she brought to every task. Good morning, Ma, Blessing greeted respectfully, not realizing she was addressing a teenager. Good morning, Kioma replied warmly, then laughed softly. But please, you don't need to call me Ma. I'm only 16 years old. Just call me Kioma. Blessing looked up, surprised by the friendly tone. All right, Kioma. Kioma stepped closer, lowering her voice conspiratorially. Listen, I need to ask you something directly. I don't like the way my stepmother talks to you. I saw how she looked at you yesterday evening, and I heard some of the argument last night. Did she really take money that my father gave you? Blessing's eyes widened in shock, amazed at how much this perceptive teenager had already observed and understood. Please, she whispered nervously. Yes, but don't tell your father. I don't want to cause more trouble in this family. Kioma's young face hardened with righteous anger. That's completely unfair. You work so hard to keep this house running smoothly. Everyone can see your dedication. Blessing smiled faintly, touched by the teenager's genuine concern, but remained silent to avoid further complications. Later that afternoon, while Emeka was at his oil company offices, Adora decided to entertain her social circle. Three of her wealthy friends arrived in expensive cars, dressed in designer clothes and dripping with gold jewelry. They settled in the air-conditioned living room, gossiping and drinking imported wine. Blessing! Adora's voice rang through the house with commanding authority. Blessing hurried in from the kitchen, ready to serve. Yes, madam. Serve the drinks properly and be quick about it, Adora commanded with deliberate coldness, wanting to demonstrate her power in front of her friends. As Blessing poured wine carefully into expensive crystal glasses, one of the women, Mrs. Kioma, smirked with malicious amusement. Adora, this housemaid of yours looks too fresh and well-fed, she said mockingly. Are you absolutely sure she's not enjoying your husband's wallet a little too much? The three women burst into cruel laughter, their voices filling the room with calculated meanness. Blessing froze, her cheeks burning with shame and embarrassment, as she realized they were discussing her as if she were an object rather than a person. Don't mind her, Adora said, rolling her eyes dramatically. She thinks she's special because my husband pities her and gives her money like she's family instead of hired help. Blessing's hand trembled with humiliation, and a few drops of wine spilled onto the polished mahogany table. Look at that, another woman mocked, pointing and laughing. She's even shaking with guilt. Definitely a sign of a guilty conscience. The laughter grew louder and more vicious, and Blessing quickly excused herself, blinking back tears as she fled to the kitchen. But what none of the cruel women noticed was 16-year-old Kioma, standing halfway down the marble staircase, watching everything with growing anger. Her hands clenched into fists as she witnessed the systematic humiliation of someone who had shown her nothing but respect and kindness. That evening, when Emeka returned home from work, he found Kioma waiting in his office with an expression that reminded him of himself during tough business negotiations. Daddy, she said firmly, her teenage voice carrying unexpected authority. You need to know exactly what goes on in this house when you're not here to see it. A teenager's eyes see what adults try to hide. Kioma is about to expose the truth, and Adora has no idea what's coming. Can you believe how cruel those women were to innocent Blessing? What do you think Kioma will tell her father? Share your thoughts below. Smash that like button if you're proud of this brave teenager, and subscribe, because next chapter reveals the explosive confrontation when all secrets come to light. Hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss what happens when a father learns the whole truth. Emeka sat down slowly in his leather office chair, studying his 16-year-old daughter's serious expression. Her mature demeanor reminded him of the sharp business instincts that had made him successful in Nigeria's competitive oil industry. What are you talking about, Kioma? He asked, though something in his gut told him he wasn't going to like what he heard. Stepmother and her friends humiliated Blessing today, Kioma said, without hesitation, her teenage voice steady with righteous anger. They mocked her, laughed at her, and called her terrible names right in our living room. Daddy, it wasn't just unkind, it was cruel and heartless. Amika's face hardened like concrete setting in the sun. Are you absolutely certain about what you're telling me? Yes, I saw and heard everything, Kioma replied firmly. I was on the stairs and they didn't know I was watching. They treated her like she was some kind of object instead of a human being who works hard for our family. For several minutes, Emeka didn't speak. His business mind processed this information while his heart filled with disappointment and anger. Finally, he stood up with the determined movement of a man who had made a decision. Where is Blessing now? He asked. In her room, probably crying again, Kioma answered sadly. Emeka walked directly upstairs and knocked gently on Blessing's door. She opened it timidly, her eyes still red from the afternoon's humiliation. Blessing, Emeka said softly but firmly. Is it true? Did my wife and her friends insult you today in my house? Blessing lowered her gaze, her voice barely a whisper. Sir, it's nothing serious. I'm used to such treatment by now. Emeka shook his head with genuine sadness. Don't say that. Nobody should ever have to get used to being humiliated and degraded. You deserve respect and dignity. Just at that moment, Adora appeared in the hallway. Her arms folded tightly across her chest and her eyes narrowed with defensive anger. "So you've gone behind my back again, Amika," she said accusingly. "Instead of putting her in her proper place, you're here defending her like she's your sister instead of hired help." Amika turned sharply to face his wife, his controlled business demeanor cracking with emotion. "Adora, why did you embarrass this hardworking girl in front of your friends today? What has she ever done to deserve such public humiliation?" Adora tossed her braided hair over her shoulder with deliberate arrogance. "Embarrass who? I don't even know what you're talking about. That girl needs to learn her position in this household." "Don't lie to me," Emeka snapped, his voice carrying the authority he used with dishonest business partners. "Kioma witnessed everything. You mocked Blessing and allowed your friends to laugh at her like she's some kind of entertainment." The accusation hung in the air like smoke from a fire that was about to become an inferno. "Amika, I'm completely done with this marriage," Adora declared suddenly, her voice rising with dramatic finality. "I need a break from all of this nonsense." Without waiting for his response, she stormed into their master bedroom and yanked open her expensive wardrobe with violent force. Designer dresses, silk blouses, and imported shoes came flying onto the bed as she pulled hangers down roughly, her movements sharp with anger and theatrical rage. She grabbed her largest Louis Vuitton traveling bag from under the bed, unzipped it aggressively, and began shoving clothes inside without any care for folding or organization. The expensive garments wrinkled and creased as she forced more items into the bag, her breathing coming fast and harsh with emotion. Emeka rushed into the bedroom after her, his voice shaking with a mixture of frustration and desperation. "Adora, stop this madness immediately. You can't just pack up and abandon our marriage because of one argument. Let's sit down and discuss this like mature adults." She spun around to face him, her eyes blazing with fury and wounded pride. "Discuss? You always want to have discussions when it concerns my behavior. But when it's about her, you defend her like she's the queen of this house instead of a common housemaid." Her voice grew louder and more theatrical. "I'm tired, Emeka, completely exhausted from competing with domestic help in my own home. I refuse to live in a house where my husband values the feelings of servants more than his own wife's dignity." She zipped the overstuffed bag with one violent pull, lifted it from the bed with both hands, and marched toward the bedroom door like a general leading a retreat. Yemeka stood frozen between anger and desperation as she brushed past him without a backward glance, her expensive perfume leaving a trail of finality in the air. At the front entrance of their beautiful home, Adora stopped only long enough to deliver her parting shot. "If this is the kind of household you want to run, where housemaids are treated like family while wives are disrespected, then enjoy it with your precious domestic help." The heavy wooden door slammed behind her with such force that it echoed through the marble hallways like thunder. Emeka stood alone in his luxurious home, listening to the sound of his wife's car engine starting and fading as she drove away into the Lagos night. His successful business life had taught him to handle difficult negotiations, hostile takeovers, and corporate crises. But nothing had prepared him for this kind of personal devastation. In her small room, Blessing sat on her narrow bed, listening to the sounds of conflict and departure echoing through the house. She couldn't help but feel that somehow, her presence had contributed to the destruction of a marriage, even though she had done nothing wrong except exist and work hard. 16-year-old Kioma found her father standing alone in the living room, staring at the front door through which his wife had just disappeared. "Daddy," she said quietly, "you did the right thing. She was wrong to treat Blessing that way." But Emeka wasn't sure if doing the right thing was worth losing his marriage, and he wondered if kindness always had to come with such a devastating price. Marriage destroyed over dignity and respect. Adeora's jealousy has finally driven her away, but was Emeka right to stand up for Blessing? Can a marriage survive when kindness to others is seen as betrayal? What do you think will happen next? Drop your opinions in the comments. Hit that like button if you believe Emeka made the right choice, and subscribe because next chapter reveals the surprising conclusion and who really wins in the end. Ring that notification bell. The final chapter will shock you with its unexpected twists. 3 weeks had passed since Adaora's dramatic departure from the Victoria Island mansion. The house felt different now, quieter in some ways, but also more peaceful, like a storm had finally passed and left clear skies behind. Emeka sat in his home office early one morning, reviewing quarterly reports from his oil and gas company, when he heard the familiar sounds of breakfast preparation coming from the kitchen. Despite all the drama and upheaval, Blessing had continued her work with the same dedication and professionalism she had always shown. Kioma appeared in the doorway, dressed for school in her crisp uniform, her backpack slung over her shoulder. "Daddy, I'm leaving for school now," she announced. But instead of rushing off, she lingered in the doorway with a thoughtful expression. "What's on your mind, sweetheart?" Emeka asked, recognizing the look his perceptive daughter got when she was processing something important. "I've been thinking about everything that happened," Kioma said carefully. "Do you think Stepmother will ever come back?" Emeka leaned back in his chair, considering his answer. "I honestly don't know, Kioma. Marriage is complicated, and people have to decide what's most important to them. But you don't regret standing up for Blessing, do you?" she pressed. "No," Emeka replied without hesitation. "Treating people with dignity and respect isn't something I'll ever apologize for, regardless of the consequences." Kioma smiled with the kind of pride that comes from seeing your parent do the right thing even when it's difficult. "I'm proud of you, Daddy. Blessing is a good person who works hard for our family. She didn't deserve to be humiliated like that." After Kioma left for school, Emeka found himself reflecting on the changes in his household. Without Adora's constant tension and cruel comments, the atmosphere had become more relaxed and harmonious. Blessing no longer walked around looking anxious and afraid. Instead, she moved through her tasks with quiet confidence and genuine smiles. Later that morning, as Emeka prepared to leave for the office, he noticed Blessing carefully tending to Adora's abandoned garden. The expensive imported flowers were wilting from neglect, but Blessing was patiently watering them and removing dead blooms. "You don't have to maintain her garden," Emeka said gently. "That's not part of your job responsibilities." Blessing looked up from the roses she was pruning, her face showing the gentle wisdom that comes from hardship overcome. "Sir, beautiful things shouldn't be allowed to die just because someone abandoned them. These flowers did nothing wrong." Her words carried deeper meaning that wasn't lost on Emeka. In many ways, she was talking about herself, about dignity, about the importance of nurturing good things even when others walk away from them. "Blessing," Emeka said thoughtfully, "I want to discuss something important with you. After everything that happened, you have every right to look for employment elsewhere. I would understand completely if you wanted to work for a family with less drama and complications." Blessing set down her gardening tools and faced him directly, her voice steady and sincere. "Sir, with respect, this is my home too now. You and Kioma have treated me with kindness and fairness. I'm not running away because one person couldn't appreciate that." Her loyalty and maturity impressed Emeka more than any business presentation he had ever heard. That evening, as they sat down for dinner, just Emeka, Kioma, and Blessing sharing a meal at the elegant dining table rather than Blessing standing aside to serve, the conversation flowed naturally and comfortably. "You know what I've learned from all of this?" Kioma said, looking between her father and Blessing. "Family isn't just about blood or marriage certificates. Family is about how you treat each other every day." Blessing smiled, her eyes reflecting the contentment of someone who finally felt valued and respected. "Your father raised you to be very wise, Kioma. Both of you raised me," Kioma corrected gently. "In the past few weeks, I've learned as much about character from watching you handle difficult situations with grace as I have from any school lesson." 2 months later, Emeka received divorce papers from Adora's lawyer. She was demanding half of his assets and custody arrangements for Kioma, claiming that he had prioritized outsiders over his family responsibilities. But during the court proceedings, something unexpected happened. Kioma, now 17 and mature beyond her years, requested to speak directly to the judge about her living situation. "Your Honor," she said with confidence that impressed everyone in the courtroom, "I want to live with my father. He has shown me what it means to treat all people with dignity and respect, regardless of their social status. That's the kind of environment I want to grow up in." She looked directly at Adora, her voice steady but firm. "My stepmother created a toxic atmosphere in our home by humiliating someone who worked hard for our family. I witnessed cruelty that had nothing to do with protecting the marriage and everything to do with jealousy and maintaining power over others. The judge was clearly moved by the teenager's mature testimony and wisdom. In the end, the divorce was finalized, but Adora received much less than she had demanded. The judge noted that her abandonment of the household and her treatment of domestic staff reflected poorly on her character and commitment to the marriage. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Emeka made a decision that surprised everyone who knew him. He enrolled Blessing in evening classes at the University of Lagos, supporting her dream of studying business administration while she continued managing his household during the day. "Sir, this is too much," Blessing protested when he presented her with the acceptance letter and paid tuition receipts. "No," Emeka replied firmly. "Intelligence and determination deserve investment, regardless of someone's current circumstances. You've shown more character and loyalty than many people I've met in boardrooms." 3 years later, at Blessing's graduation ceremony, Emeka and Kioma sat in the audience beaming with pride as she walked across the stage to receive her degree. She had maintained excellent grades while continuing her household responsibilities, proving that respect and opportunity can transform lives. Kioma, now 20 and studying international business herself, leaned over to her father during the ceremony. "You know what's amazing, Daddy? When Stepmother left, she thought she was punishing us. Instead, she freed us to become the family we were meant to be." After graduation, Blessing was offered a position as an administrative coordinator at Emeka's oil company. She accepted gratefully but insisted on continuing to help manage the household that had become her true home. On the day she started her new office job, wearing a professional business suit that Emeka and Kioma had helped her choose, she looked in the mirror and barely recognized the confident young woman staring back at her. That evening, as the three of them shared dinner at their dining table, now permanently set for three instead of Blessing standing aside to serve, Emeka reflected on how the greatest blessings often come disguised as the most difficult challenges. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "I used to think that keeping peace in the family meant avoiding conflict at all costs. But I learned that real peace comes from standing up for what's right, even when it's uncomfortable." Blessing smiled, raising her glass of wine. She was no longer the frightened housemaid, but an educated professional who had earned her place at the table through character, perseverance, and the support of people who recognized her worth. "To families that choose each other," she said softly, "and to the courage it takes to do what's right instead of what's easy." As they clinked glasses in their beautiful home, all three understood that sometimes losing the wrong person allows you to find the right family, one built on mutual respect, genuine caring, and the understanding that dignity should never depend on social status or wealth. Years later, when people asked Emeka about the divorce and its aftermath, he would always say the same thing. "I learned that kindness is never wasted, that standing up for others defines your character more than any business success, and that the best families are sometimes the ones you build rather than the ones you're born into." Blessing eventually started her own consulting firm, specializing in helping other domestic workers pursue education and professional development. Kioma became a successful international businesswoman who never forgot the lessons about dignity and respect she learned from watching her father defend someone who couldn't defend herself. And in the beautiful mansion in Victoria Island, the garden that Blessing had refused to let die continued to bloom with flowers that had learned to thrive even after being abandoned. A perfect metaphor for the resilience of the human spirit when nurtured with genuine care and respect. What an incredible journey from humiliation to triumph. This story proves that standing up for others, even when it costs us personally, always leads to something beautiful. Blessing went from being a mistreated maid to a successful businesswoman, all because one man chose dignity over keeping peace with the wrong person. Which part of this transformation touched your heart most? Emeka's courage to defend what's right, Kioma's wisdom in recognizing true character, or Blessing's resilience in rising above cruelty? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story reminded you that real family is built on respect and love rather than blood and marriage certificates, smash that like button. Your support helps us share more stories about the power of human dignity and standing up for those who can't defend themselves. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss our powerful stories that prove kindness is never weakness. and that treating everyone with respect creates the kind of success that money can't buy. Share this story with someone who needs to remember that their worth isn't determined by their job title or social status, but by their character and the respect they show to others. Sometimes the person you defend today might become the family member you treasure tomorrow. What story should we tell next? Drop your suggestions in the comments. Should we explore more tales of workplace dignity, family dynamics, or the power of education to transform lives? Remember, every act of kindness creates ripples that can change multiple lives in ways we never expect. Keep treating everyone with dignity. You never know whose life you might transform, including your own. Until next time, this is your reminder that real strength comes from lifting others up, not putting them down. God bless.